We're back for another week in sport, and I'm here joined by my co-host Ollie Wilson. Let's get straight to the point, mate. You witnessed the quickest own goal ever. Talk us through it, mate, in under 14 seconds.
A calamity. That's all you need to say. I mean, Liechtenstein against Latvia was never going to attract much attention. I'm amazed how much attention it's had. I think it's almost had like 1 million views, the Viaplay tweet that's gone out, the video of it. And yeah, 14 seconds for Latvia to concede an own goal. The side are ranked, what, 136 in the world against the side ranked like 203rd. It was never going to be a barnstormer of footballing quality, but I don't think anybody was expecting to see, yeah, the fastest own goal. Although we don't officially know that yet. There's still very little evidence of another goal, own goal being scored in an international game faster than that. But there may be
Wild.
a San Marino against Liechtenstein game lost back in the ether of like the 1980s or something that could have had it as well. I mean, it was just, yeah, it's ludicrous. But it's so embarrassing for them
It
as
is
well. Marcin
embarrassing.
Oshers, who's scored it. The Athletic have even done a deep dive on
No.
an article analyzing like second by second of who's at fault and why it happens. And they even analyzed the Liechtenstein players' celebration of they all go to this one zonal point to celebrate inside the area because they did it with zonal marking that helped them score. I mean,
Oh
it's
my
bonkers.
God.
It's the overanalysis of world football that we have at the moment.
Yeah, you're definitely under the spotlight. I mean, I feel for them. It was a horrible one to come under scrutiny as well because it's so avoidable. There wasn't actually that much pressure either. It was poor from all round really. But you know, there is a lot of pressure on these guys, obviously, those competitions, especially for some of the smaller nations as well. But yeah, under 14 seconds, take me off the pitch
You're
instantly at that point.
you're a manager, right? You're a coach. What do
Yeah.
you say to a player in that moment?
What can you say? I mean, you're probably still in shock yourself at that point. You're probably just picking your mouth and jaw off the floor. I think the only good thing is it's so early. You should have enough time for a bit of redemption. I think that's the thing to look at. It's the only spin on it really at this moment. I'd be thinking about is okay. Well, there's still literally 89 minutes and 50 seconds still to play. So go out and try and get that redemption. But yeah, strange week of sort of European ties. Obviously, people having their and the playoffs, obviously, Wales go out to Poland, right, on penalties, whilst England had these two friendlies that just caused up more drama than anything, mate. We it started off with Ben White obviously saying he didn't want to obviously join the team. You then people obviously analysing who we're going to play in those friendlies against Brazil and obviously Belgium in their Tintin kit, if you didn't know, was the reason they were
Mm.
playing in that random blue, brown, and white kit. What do you think's happening with the England team? Do you think Southgate's actually put it in the right place by playing some new? He called up Cole Palmer, didn't play him. What do you make of that?
Um, I I don't mind reshuffling. I think you have to have a competitive international squad. We were actually having a long discussion about this, where on the golf course, which is where I spend most of my time, Sam, at the moment. So we were having a discussion about this, a few of us, who cover football professionally, and we were saying it's better, arguably, to have lesser technical players but
Mm,
hungrier players than it is to have guys that are resting on their laurels. So if
yeah,
you're bringing
yeah,
in fresh blood every so often, I think it's a massive boost to just keep everybody else, the senior guys, on their toes, and to give youngsters at least a chance to see what the situation is like at international level, how it all works, even if they don't get to play. If they do get to play, they have, a little taste of playing for their country, which at the end of the day should be the one of the top achievements for any footballer to want to get in, representing your nation.
mm,
We can go back to kind of things like the Ryder Cup and how they want to get paid for that and how that shouldn't probably be paid. And instead, it's the honor of representing the United States or Europe. That's what a lot of international competition should be looked at. And I don't mind Southgate rotating. Obviously, we saw two very different performances between the Brazil game and the Belgian game. I think that comes with international friendlies as well. I've vowed never to set foot at an international friendly ever again after going to see England Germany at Wembley many years ago, and it was
Yeah.
I spent 90 quid for the most boring night of my life watching sport. It was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't take much necessarily from the performances too much, although I do think Ivan Toney really put himself in
Yeah.
a positive light in the shop window at
T-
international
You
level,
know,
you know?
Tony did, and there was a lot of discussion, obviously, around whether it's going to be him or Ollie Watkins. But Ollie Watkins came on and ended up helping with that equaliser. He chases that lost cause and manages to obviously prod it in. My only thing with internationals or the international friendlies at this point leading up to a tournament is all of these friendlies um, coming up now. This is kind of almost your last chance to see people, because once the season's over and you play a couple of those warm-up games, you need to be implementing your tactics and implementing the tactics with a team and squad that you know or think you're going to know to take. The 23 players you want to hope are available at those points for those friendlies. So when you go and do these friendlies and you don't take, you call up Cole Palmer, for instance, and then don't play him, whilst it's nice to show him the international setup, he's actually come through all of the youth. He's come up, he's played the 21s,
Mm,
he's played 18s, whatever it may be. So he kind of understands that tournament football. He understands what it's like to be away from those environments. Play him. This is your chance to see him. I don't want you experimenting in the 2 or 3 warm-up games. Those
really?
2 or 3 warm-up games is to get into a rhythm, right? I watched Lewis Dunk play, and I'm just like, you're not there. Potentially the call up of people were talking about, like the likes of whether it's young Braithwaite, get the allegiances over to play for the senior team there, and other sort of centre halves. I'd play Conser ahead of him, regardless whether he's playing right back or out of position. Dunk is not anywhere near where he needs to be at this level, and we're still experimenting with him in these games. We're talking about Ivan Toney and Watkins. Take them both.
Mm.
Be bold. Take them, have them, because we just don't know what Harry Kane's going to recovery is going to be like. Obviously with his ankle, take them both. It gives you something different. I've heard this argument, funny enough, on Talk Sport, and the platform there. They were talking about, well, if Kane goes down, we'll take Ivan Toney because it's like for like. Well, what? So you don't have a plan B? That's what you're telling me. You rather not have the plan B. I'd rather have Ollie Watkins as a plan B. So it was a bit weird. The whole Ben White thing for me, he's like, well, when you called upon me before, we've had this argument with Steve Holland. You then buried me. We've obviously discussed it. You buried me in public, and now the next week, because things haven't gone well in 2 games, all of a sudden the next point of call from Southgate is, oh, the door's open. It's all on Ben. It's up to Ben. Like if Ben White wants to come back, we'll take him. Is that because you're squeaking in your pants a little bit, Gareth? Because you've realised actually your back line is not as strong as you expected it to be?
So I just want to go back to something you said about I don't want to see a rotation and experimentation at this point. I would argue that this is the last and best point to do that.
Mm,
I would say the game, any friendly, there'll be at least one before the European Championships this summer. That's when you're setting your stall out again. But this international break, what happens if, say, 3, 4 of the England squad pick up knocks in the run-in of what is a grueling European and Premier League season, and highly likely with players getting stressed, pushed to their limits more and more as we continue to add games to
mm,
the schedule. I'm sure the City players will have to fly off to, the back end of Vietnam for a week for a post-season pre-season training camp or something like that to
yeah.
make some more money for some more investors as well. So look, that'll all have to be done. So I don't mind bringing in players and giving some look. Lewis Dunk might not be there at that level that we consider at this point, right? But
Mm,
crikey, if we end up with 4 bad injuries towards the end of the season, we could end up being thinking, well, could do with Lewis Dunk actually being in that back line suddenly. So I don't mind it at this point of get some people maybe a bit more
mm.
adjusted and integrated into the England setup just
Do,
in
do, you- do you
case.
think do you think there was mind games then? Do you think those injuries are legit? You saw Stones go down. Akanji came out of his international game. We saw Walker obviously go down in the first one. Do you think it's mind games, or do you think these are injuries that need to be taken seriously? And then again, come back to your point, I guess, is should we be playing these lads, especially when there's 10 games to go, 10 league games to go, they're fighting on all fronts. Basically, is it something that we need to be looking at, and obviously the well-being of some of these players?
On that last point, I can certainly understand why people would say, what's the point in playing experienced international players in these sorts of friendlies for the sake of getting them up to pace with a game that
Mm,
maybe they just don't need right now? And it would possibly be more beneficial to have 10, 14 days off completely for
mm,
their final run of the season that gives them the best chance to be healthy going into the back end of the campaign and ready then for the Euros, because they will know what Gareth Southgate's football is all about. If Southgate is changing his style of football at this point and the senior guys need to be playing to understand it, we haven't got a hope in hell of winning a tournament. Let's put it that way this summer. So the system will be there and be integrated already. So
yeah.
I kind of understand, and I would agree with that point if Southgate came out and said that as well. That's what I'd like. I'd like a bit of open honesty.
Mm,
As for whether the injuries are legit or whether this is players going, oh, I've got something, don't play me too much more, I've got more important things to do. I know I know players that have skipped out on injuries to be able to avoid international breaks. I've been sat with a player at a certain event who has changed the ankle that they're injured on, that they're unable to play, and therefore they're at this nice event instead of playing for their club side. Like, I've seen that in the flesh, so I know it happens. You hope it's not. We
yeah,
get deceived and pushed around a bit as football fans so much anyway. We don't need that level of chicanery. I'd understand if Carl Walker just said, I don't need it this week, guys. I just don't need it. And I understand with anybody that says, like, I just don't want to be a part of this thing right now when I've got other more pressing needs, whether it's financial or just the club game or whatever. So
yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that. I mean, it is difficult. Obviously, we've seen the likes of, again, headaches as well. Mano coming through. He is. I mean, it was fantastic. It's and I'm not. I love seeing younger players coming through, and I love that. And what I don't like is the pressures sometimes they get, and people going, he's going to be world class. He's going to be the main man. But I
oh,
think
this
like you need to
tagline
just,
already on his shoulders is too much to be thinking like, oh, you got to start him at the Euros. We do not
oh,
have to. We
yeah,
don't. We definitely don't.
and that is one of the things obviously that I'm conscious of, because I don't want us to go down a Theo Walcott route. Theo done okay, but then there was just untold pressures on him. Michael Owen's probably one of the few that maybe ran with that pressure, and then he ended up at Real Madrid. I think he's one of the few. Wayne Rooney, the same. I think that
Mm.
it doesn't happen often. Um, they're two obvious names, but we've seen a lot of youngsters come through that just haven't made it. They've played one or two. Try and remember the kid's name, something Johnson. I think he was at Man City at one point. Young lad, blonde, flowy hair. I
Oh
think
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
no one knows. He's probably serving fish and chips. Who knows?
He was on the
Because
bench at Kings Lynn the other week when I did that game. Yeah.
oh well, that's the thing, is like there's a lot of lads that do that, and there's all these pressures, and they disappear. I think it was a young Anthony Gardner, centre half at Tottenham. I think to be fair, he did get a couple of injuries, but he boom gone before you know it at Hull, and then making his way down the league. So you do have to be careful with some of these lads that obviously do that. We I think that's just the way we live right now. We want everything immediately right now, and everything's like fast forwarded like too quickly. That being said, I would start him. If I look at someone that can actually sit next to Declan Rice in that middle of park,
Mm.
it's probably him. That's the dilemma at the moment. Is you've got those two, Rice and Mano, people are looking at, obviously, because Calvin Phillips has fallen off a cliff. So you're looking at those two. Henderson's a bit older now. The game slowing down for him. He's gone and done that hiatus in Saudi. Gone to Ajax.
Is that what we're calling it? A hiatus?
That's what I'm. This is exactly what I'm calling him. It's a well-paid one as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But he's obviously gone and done that. I think that maybe he's the one that needs to play next to him, because by the looks of things, he wants to play Bellingham in that 10 role.
Well, he has to.
He's kind
Like,
of shown his cards with Foden, playing off the left. So it's between him and Rashford. Personally, I'm starting Foden over Rashford. And Saka and Kane, if both fit, have those spots. I don't think there's too many arguments around that. It is just who plays alongside Declan Rice, because everyone's obviously still calling for Madison. And I, put my allegiances aside that he is a Spurs player. He's the only. That's another one. Do you play him and you play Bellingham next to Rice? I mean, what do you reckon is the best formula at that point for
I,
England?
I, I want Bellingham in that same role he's playing for Real Madrid, like just off striker number 10,
Mm,
because just look at what he's done this season. Like,
yeah,
you don't start taking the round peg out the round hole and putting it in a square. Just
yeah,
leave it in that round hole. It works perfectly as a number 10. It's fine, Gareth.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I understand having a Minu and a Rice together. Rice is now a lot more grown up than he was maybe 3, 4 years ago. I think
yeah.
the move to Arsenal has put more expectation on him, and he's risen to that expectation, which is great to see because you see so many players move out of a club like a West Ham to a
Hmm.
bigger side, a title contending side, and it's a bit too much. It's that
Calvin
next levels.
Phillips.
Yeah. I mean, going to Manchester City, I just don't. What was the lad at Swansea who did it and never seen again as well? Scott Sinclair. Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you remember him?
yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
was
yeah,
a
yeah. No,
great player,
sync
sat on the
actually. Yeah,
bench
yeah,
for
yeah,
500 grand a week or whatever and never seen again. Um, and I don't mind the idea then of having an experienced head alongside youthful exuberance, because I always
Mm,
think that at some level we've never taken enough advantage of, when Rashford was coming through and he'd run at defenders and he'd take them
mm,
on and he had the confidence and there wasn't as much of the kind of talk and negativity around him that's kind of occurred over the last 3 years or so. We never really capitalized on that enough.
mm.
And I don't mind having then, all right, the young, fun, excitable player alongside Rice who steadies the ship and keeps it all cool. And if removing Madison, we have to do to ensure Bellingham has that role, fine. It,
Yeah,
it's it's tough, but it's international football at the end of the day, and you can't be moving things around because we've spent too long with England with the golden generation of trying to fit everybody in positions where some of them can't play, and it became wasted. So instead, let's do what I said at the very beginning of this, and let's have a team filled with players in the right position that are hungry for it, as opposed to a group of stars that aren't quite where they really want to be on a football field anyway, and it all kind of goes to pot.
with that then. Well, who do you have at left back? Because Chilwell looked like he struggled in both games. Really, obviously, he wasn't playing at that level. We know Gareth likes to actually play Trippier as a left back when Luke Shaw's not available. Whilst Trippier can do it, he's naturally obviously a right back. Do you think Chilwell obviously not done himself any favors in his last two games? Do you see him making it on the plane?
Yeah, I do. And I think two performances in international friendlies, one where nobody covered themselves in glory, and the other one where, look, not great, maybe put off by the Tintin uniform of Belgium. Happy to give him that if he needs, because that was a rogue choice. Big
Yeah,
fan of it. But I would always want to have a left back at left back. I think when you start putting a right back in those situations, and you'll know as a tactician, it changes how defenders are going to clear the ball and how they're going to
yeah,
position themselves as
yeah,
well, which is then going to lead to a weakness that can be exploited, particularly when there are so many strong right wingers in European football right now. So I'd
yeah,
much rather have a naturally left-footed player. And let's face it, Ben Chilwell is not a bad defender. This could just be 2 games where he's all right. It's not been his day for some reason. Like on his best day, I'm not saying we're not going to lobby a world class or anything like that, but he's a very good left back. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
would like to see him at least in that squad. I'd be happy with him starting as well. I like Kieran Trippier a lot, and he brings a lot with set pieces too. But yeah, I'd rather have a left back at left back personally.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I never thought I'd be saying this, but really advocate of Luke Shaw in an England shirt. He seems to step it up as well when available. I do still like how he operates a little bit. I think he is a bit of a confidence guy as well.
Mm.
But he's got to have the right centre half inside for it to work.
Which is who at the moment then?
Well, that's the difficult part at the moment because obviously if John Stones if fit, is the first centre half on the page right now. He seems to keep playing Harry Maguire, and I, I still don't think he's suitable as a centre back pairing. If you're playing a back three, I think it's okay if we go down that route. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That is a difficult one there. And that's maybe why Harry Maguire seems to just keep pushing through and getting that. Controversially, whilst you say about round round pegs, round holes, etc., I'd actually play Carl Walker centre half. Honestly, I think as he's got a little bit older, he's played as a back three, but playing him with Stones just to give you that bit of cover. And this is where you really do need to look at the Ben Whites. And if it's not Ben White, then you play Trippier as a right
Mm.
back with those two. I actually think it's a great centre half pairing, honestly. And I think Carl Walker shows that he can actually still play that role, especially as he's got a little bit older. Um, that'd be me. Uh, oh, it's not going to happen. I don't think Gomez is a starter. I think he's
Mm.
good to have as cover. I just don't think he's a starter. It worries me when Klopp doesn't have him as the next man up behind Kanate and Virgil. He sometimes obviously goes to someone else before Gomez.
What
That is
about
also a
then
worry.
Fikayo Tomori, who's had an injured winter with Milan, but has been one of the most consistent, excellent defense. I mean, the way
100%.
the Milan fans have lauded him on his return, great to be back, and how much he was missed as well in that back line for the Rossoneri. What about him? Because I think he's shown the best defensively,
100%.
arguably traditionally
100%.
in Europe. He is without a doubt. Him and Kalulu have been one of the best defensive pairings when they're both fit.
I don't know how much Southgate goes to watch him. You seem to always see Southgate likes home comforts. We
Mm.
kind of see him mainly every weekend. He seems to be at a Premier League game. So I haven't seen whether he's out there enough. I know, of course, he's going to send other people, but You're the one picking the team. Yes, you're listening to people, but you need to physically see a player. Whereas if you're there seeing week in week out, you're seeing Maguire, dropping off his Tesco shop as well by the sounds of it, because of how close they are. Right. You need to go out and see some other players. Yeah, I think Tomori is phenomenal. And there was a point actually Tammy Abrahams was on fire for Roma, but he
Mm.
still wasn't even getting a look in the England setup. I like Guy at Palace as well. I like him, and but is he? I don't know. It just seems he just. This is where I think.
Well, look,
And this is
Ruben
the argument with
Loftus-Cheek as well
Southgate.
was like banging goals in. I mean, he's been without a doubt the best player for Milan, aside from Giroud. There's like Giroud, Pulisic, and Loftus-Cheek have been the three in
Yeah,
for Milan right now, who are one of the most informed sides in Italian football. They're in playing deep into the Europa League now at the quarterfinal stage. And like Ruben Loftus-Cheek must be looking around, being like, "Hey, is anybody noticing at this point?" It, it's the worst English football bias to miss out and not even those names don't get mentioned on places like TalkSport or Five Live either. Like I've not heard Loftus Cheek or Tamori really get a nod of,
I'll
oh
be
look,
honest.
they're doing it.
I'll be honest. Out of sight, out of mind is comes to
Yeah,
comes to my head
yeah.
really a little bit. And you know what? I've heard Loftus. I've not seen enough, but all I keep hearing is reports of Loftus Cheeks on fire as well. So I agree. I actually think it would benefit English players going to play abroad for a bit, not just on like 6 month loan because you're a youngster or whatever, go and play in Holland, but actually go and play 2 or 3 seasons, in foreign countries, understanding the culture, the way they play, how they set up. Actually, I think would benefit when they do go abroad. And I think if you look at it, look at Brazil. If you look at the Brazilian team, they don't play in Brazil. Everyone's dotted about
That's money,
everywhere. Yeah,
mate. That is money. Don't worry,
of
that's
course,
not the money.
of course. But if you look at how they end up playing, the pace changes for them. They're able to still do what they do at different paces, the cultures. I think it helps. If you, this is where I think like the English struggle. And again, people talk about. I'm coming off tangent here a little bit from the England side, but we're talking about like when people talk about English managers winning the Premier League. I think more English managers need to go and manage abroad to understand a different style of football to bring that in and have those methodologies
Mhm.
and take them into the Prem. So I like the lad that's at Rems in League One, the English guy there, because I think it would be really good for him eventually to come into the Premier League. Might not be a top side, but bring some of those different pieces together in the Prem, and I think that's the way an English manager will win the Premier League at this point. Because I
The
couldn't tell you,
this is the football manager lad though, isn't it? Will Still.
yeah,
He's the
yeah,
guy
yeah,
who
yeah,
put the job application in after how many seasons on Football Manager and has worked his way up through the ranks, which is,
yeah,
I mean, that's a whole nother tangent if you want to get into football management and computer games relating into that. But no, I think I agree with you. I always think that a lot of players will come back from international stints. We've actually seen it in Italian football, the number of the Scottish players as well that have gone to places like Bologna, just had consistent game time and it's
yeah,
improved them immensely. And they've taken back to the national team setup or to other places. I
yeah.
think Jordan Henderson playing for Ajax will be a positive. They're
Okay.
having a nightmare of a year this year, Ajax, but I still think that will work because, as you say, you're seeing a different style of football. And for a manager who manages against Premier League sides. Look, it's great. It's fast. It's entertaining. The Liverpool Man City game was the best of the Premier League. International football doesn't work like that. Tournament football doesn't work
Mm,
like that. You're going to have to play, particularly as an England manager, sides that are going to sit in and be like Simeone's Atletico Madrid. Like, it's not pretty, but it's effective. Just
mm.
barricading the 18-yard box and then hitting on the counter and things like that. And you can get caught out really easy in tournament football that way. So if you go to a different league, learn how to adapt and approach different styles of football, yeah, it's only beneficial.
100%, 100%. And look, it's hard for coaches out there in general, right? And this is for me
The
moving.
union's coming out, yeah.
Oh well, I'm moving it completely across now. Like, yes, it is hard for us. Yes, I'm a manager and a coach. Yeah, I'm jumping on that union. I'm gonna put a lot of work into the guys that are in the NFL right now. As a coach, trying to put all this stuff together as it is your team, you're working with your GM. There's so many pieces, moving pieces. But there's always rule changes, Ollie. And there's been some
Ugh.
rule changes and that have come out that
Yeah,
I
I'm
think is
out.
only going to be harder for those guys on the defense. Tell everyone what's been going on, mate, over in the
I'm
NFL and these rules.
I think if anybody who's interested in the NFL has been on Instagram or social media, they'll see what the defensive players have thought about the rule changes. The banning of the hip drop tackle, which, as I understand it, is wrapping up a player around the hips and dragging them down to the ground, where you also then end up inadvertently, most of the time, I'm sure, putting your weight through the player onto them. It's what leads to ankle and knee injuries in particular because the body weight of a defensive player is going through those joints. It's also what you get when you put more limitations on high challenge tackles and head-to-head contact and shoulder to the head, even if it's inadvertent or not being heavily penalized. Players are then going to try and grab the legs and the hips to bring running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks down. And now we're banning that. So I don't really understand where the window is to tackle somebody on a body because we're talking the hips are near the belly. And I
Yeah,
guarantee if you get hold of somebody's belly and
yeah,
they're running at 13, 14 miles an hour minimum past you, your arms are going to go down to the hips anyway as you bring them down, right? So
yeah,
that's going to be a hip tackle. I guarantee as well that if somebody drops their shoulder and you go in shoulder to shoulder and your shoulder pad is just on the top of their shoulder pad and rolls into the head, you're going to hit the head. So we're literally talking almost like the pectoral muscles is what we're able to see taking place on a football field in terms of tackling and
it,
shoulder hits into the side.
it's hard.
What?
It's hard as a defensive player as it is, you know. And if you're running through, okay, I'll tell you this benefits Tyreek Hill. I mean, if you can get alongside Tyreek Hill in the best of times, good luck. But now you've got no chance. What are you grabbing it? You can't grab him with anything. You're in trouble. I mean, it's interesting because of the way the game is obviously, the game's always changing and evolving for sure. It seems to me it's outweighs on the offensive side. You know, we're going to see a lot. You know, I part of me thinks as well, looking at the game, I think certainly last year we had quite a few games that were 6-all, 9-6. You know,
Mm.
it makes me think now that the rock's going to be thrown a hell of a lot more now. In that sense, because one, you could just see the trends of what's been going on with running backs. That is it. Once you've caught it, you've got to be on me. If you don't, good luck. You're not catching me. You know, I think you're going to see a lot more
Well,
screen passes as well.
I was going to say, I think if you're a running back, you're like licking your lips. I mean, was it
Yeah,
Kenyon Drake who's come out already and been like, "Oh, this is how I ended up damaging my knee, so I'm all for this ruling." If I'm Harry Roseman, I'm sat there thinking, I'm really glad I picked up one of the strongest running backs in the league right now, Saquon Barkley, because I don't know how you stop Saquon Barkley without grabbing his hips or legs and bringing him
yeah,
down. I mean, what's kind of funny actually, Sam, is that we had the rule introduction of you can't hit a quarterback below the knee a few years ago.
yeah,
So there's a knee to head limit on the quarterback. We've now evaporated that and continue to make it smaller. So outfield players are seemingly having a rule change that protects them in a tackle more than the one guy that needs the most protection on the field, the quarterback.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's wild, isn't it?
and it is all for offensive gains. It's to keep it looking splashy and great. But that's not what makes American football great. That makes Instagram clicks. What makes American football great is a Steelers Baltimore Ravens AFC Championship game in the snow where it ends up finishing 12-9, but they've beaten the living daylights out of each other, and Troy Polamalu is trying to leapfrog over the line to get a quarterback
Yeah,
sack.
yeah,
I mean, those are as great moments in games and tense as a shootout free for all.
yeah,
And because the shootouts will continue to come, it becomes less special. And when it's less special, it's less meaningful. And if it's less meaningful, it just becomes the way. And when it becomes the way, things get stale and boring. I'm really worried
yeah.
about this. What about the kickoff rule though? Because we've seen that change, Sam. If you want to
I
take us through
like
the
this.
XFL kickoff rule.
I actually like this because it was kickoffs. It was still an extra couple of minutes for me still to go and get a drink because last season we rarely saw returns. And if we did see them not take the fair catch and want to return it, they were lucky to get to the 25 if they were lucky.
Mm,
So and where they obviously extended it, if you did take take a fair catch or it went out the end zone and it's going obviously to the 25 anyway, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? Now with this new XFL style where obviously I think obviously everyone lines up. I think it's the offense or is it like the 35-yard? They're all lined up together, face off. The kicker is unopposed, 20 yards back or whatever it is now. It's only going to encourage the returns, and this is exactly what we see. You talk about you picking up Saquon Barkley. As a Cardinals fan, we picked up DJ Dallas, who's an absolutely turned specialist. I'm absolutely buzzing about it because I think he's someone that actually might be able to benefit off these rules. There are a number of other things now to obviously disencourage people just smashing it back to the end zone as
mm,
well. So I think again, it's for kickers. Actually, I've got to say, I think it's quite good because your role now is actually, I think, of importance of getting this right. The stock levels come up a little bit. Your skill level has to come up a little bit now because there's people like myself, play football and other lads that obviously play as well, probably thinking I can make a living of doing kickoffs if all I've got to really do is mash it to the
mm.
end zone,
Yeah,
and if it goes out, no problem,
perfect.
it's not bad. So I do think the skill level's gone up. That rule I'm actually excited about. I was actually surprised that the NFL ran with it, considering the XFL have done it, and it was their idea. Obviously, doing it. It's a bit of a hybrid. In terms of kickoffs, the only piece I don't like is now you have to declare if you're doing an onside kick.
Mm.
I don't that one. I don't like. I quite like the little surprise. It almost gave me that WWE out of nowhere feel. It
Yeah.
was that's why I
The
quite like.
McAfee in the Super Bowl, the McAfee against the Texans when he kicked it 10 yards and then and grabbed it, like those were two of the cheekiest plays, game-changing play, that one for the Colts in the sorry, for the Saints in that Super Bowl against the Colts
Yeah,
for the second half kickoff. I mean, those are it's a huge momentum
iconic.
swing if you can
Mm.
be cheeky enough to pull it off at the right moment, or it's a game changer like we had when the Seahawks played the Packers in the playoffs a number of years ago, and it was that epic shootout, and the Seahawks managed to get the onside kick after terrible hands. I think it was from Ha Clinton Dix trying to get the bouncy ball. It's those moments of pressure where an onside kick in week 7, you're like, meh, whatever. An onside kick in the playoffs, and everyone on that hands team is suddenly a bit more like, ooh, jitters. I got the shake. I got to make sure I catch it. Oh no, it's gone wrong.
And
Declaring
that's
it, you're a bit like, all right, we're all ready for this. It's a bit more, yeah,
the thing is now as well with that they have to do it because of the new kickoff rule as well.
because
You
everybody's
don't
lined up 30, 40 yards in front of the kicker. There's no chance to have a returning player anywhere near it.
anyone near it,
So, but
and
if that's the
it's
case, do
difficult
we
in that
just
side.
what about the idea I've had a debate with some friends about this of a 4th and 20 play instead of an onside kick?
Yeah, yeah,
What if you're the
yeah.
New
That
York
could,
Jets last year?
yeah,
You're not
that
making
could
a
work.
4th and 20. You've got a better chance of making an onside kick than you do if you're the New York Jets with a 4th and 20 last year. I think it just that idea. It's a when you first hear it. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you think, I don't know, like that works great if you're Patrick Mahomes or the Philadelphia Eagles or whatever. If you're a high-powered offense, but if you're a Ravens team that's got a lot of run game, particularly and slightly less effective in the pass game, you're not looking at 4th and 20 and being like, oh, that's fair. Like
Yeah,
Chiefs
I
have
mean,
got
I'd love a Hail Mary, just one last Hail Mary. Everyone
one
loves
Hail
it.
Mary. Yeah.
Yeah, one last Hail Mary. You can have one per game.
They'll be drafting more and more basketball players, man. They'll be having like, Takum. Oh
Yeah,
no, Taco,
yeah,
whatever his name is. Yeah.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
be 6'11" stood
The
there in the
Space
end zone.
Jam
Just yeah.
arm just coming out. Yeah, yeah.
I
I'm
think
real. Yeah.
also
It
how many touchdowns did Devin Hester get on this new kickoff rule? Because like this seems a gold mine for kick returners. There are going to be
yeah,
gaps all over the place, and you need to, as I always think, seeing it as a return team, sorry, as a kickoff team, you kind of need to have guys deeper back around your kicker because that just provides depth more than anything else. Rather than
yeah.
you break one line, it becomes like rugby. You break the line and you're suddenly straight through.
Straight through. That's the thing. That's I do wonder how that's obviously going to operate. And that's where people now the special teams guys, that yeah that little cookbook you had. Start
Mm,
again. You've got to come up with obviously some new styles, new plays, and be wise to that. Not just what you're going to do offensively on the kickoff is how you obviously combat that as well from a special teams perspective. But that, as I said, for me, that is an exciting part. It was just last year. It was getting a little bit just wow, so many touchbacks, like just people just smashing it, like. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, great, you got possession now. Um, and it is like you said. Now you've got to declare the onside kick as well. I think there's more. As I said, more people will do it. So I'm looking forward to that element. It will be interesting to see how people obviously combat this, the tackling. Whilst it is nice to see people, be a bit safer, and it's nice to see players maybe have a little bit more longevity in the game. It is like a bit of a toss up as to how that now works. As I said, I don't like how it outweighs one side of the ball. So like, and it seems, as I said, defenders as it is tough in that sense. Whilst the tush push is still legal, by the way. So you got to be happy with that, mate. If you feel like you can get the centre to do what Jason Kelsey was doing.
I still struggle with anybody being annoyed about the tush push when there is nothing illegal about it at all. The only person that suffers is whoever's playing center. As Jason Kelsey has said since his retirement, that was a nightmare. And he used to scream the worst words under his breath. Well, not under his breath, like out loud as they were doing it, because it was just find a way to get through it. Sam, though, I am genuinely not worried because that's a bit overly dramatic, but I'm not looking forward to how these rule changes. As we said last week, player safety, and we always say player safety is paramount, all of
Mm,
that. but you cannot make a game like American football 100% safe. It never can be. And bad injuries are unfortunately going to happen. It's great that we don't have what it was when it was leather
Mm.
helmets in the college days and people, an average of like 4 or 5 guys dying a year on
Yeah, that's not
around
good.
the
Yeah,
league and
yeah.
stuff. But you cannot have a safe NFL league until you go to flag.
Yeah,
And
that's true. Yeah, that's
uh,
true.
and so at what point are we taking away a competitive nature or a point to some of these things to make it a bit safer? And at what point are we losing the actual sport? Because the sport is about the competition of offense against defense. And if it's so weighted for an offense, we're losing some of the competition, that competitive nature.
So this is where I think technology needs to come into play a little bit with like yeah, actually looking at turf and the cleats etc. as well. I think actually it's those elements that probably need to be looked at because whilst you're saying obviously the weight is being pulled down, actually some of the damage is where the foot is stuck in the turf. That
Mm-hmm.
the cleat doesn't have any movement. I know there is a company, it's escaped from me. Someone put it on my radar a couple of weeks ago where they've actually come up with a cleat where the studs or the molds actually have a little bit of give. You won't notice it, but it's enough so that your knee doesn't get stuck in the ground. Because
Mm.
whilst it's saying it's the tackles, we saw a lot of guys off the ball where they made that certain movement and their knees were going. So I actually think it's actually the facilities and the technology is probably the next step now before actually going into any more rule changes at this point. Make sure pads are right. We've done helmets technology is amazing. It's only getting better now. I think looking at any trackers around health, so whether it's the heart, and making sure obviously they're getting the right rest in between downs. Those little bits now we really need to look at for player safety.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect the game. In that
Yeah.
in that sense, actually makes probably the game better. It might make it quicker because the guys obviously feel a bit more comfortable in themselves.
You know what,
The
Sam, though?
yeah.
Sam, changing things like turf and that sort of stuff, that costs owners money. Like
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of teams
yeah.
have spent a lot of money on some big renovations to have like AstroTurf down, places like MetLife and stuff, rather than, and it also limits the kind of what else you can do sometimes on
Mm.
that surface. It keeps the cost down of having to cover up an NFL field to keep it preserved for stuff. It costs money.
It does, but then if you say that costs money, if you've just paid out, you've got a I don't know running back wide receiver who's got 80 million guaranteed money, and then he goes down because of your turf. Man,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
you know,
That's
so it does. You need to show them that they've got to be aware that. I say I'd rather see the technology element obviously like kick up a little bit. Would be cool, as I said before any more sort of rule changes in that side, unless the Arizona Cardinals have a rule where they start with at least 14 points plus 14 every single
yeah,
game.
yeah, that's
That rule I will get behind.
I'd still take them against the spread, mate, I tell you.
Unless we're playing the Cowboys, mate.
Yeah,
I'm all
that's
right
true.
with that. We don't need
Yeah,
that. We
yeah,
can start minus. Fine,
yeah.
no problem. We've got their number. But yeah, it's a strange one. Will be interesting. Obviously, preseason it's hard to tell because obviously it's a bit softer. Not one's ever really going into it. So it'll be those first sort of 2 or 3 games. We'll really sort of see what the scores are like. For those betting, I think the over could be quite good at this
Mm.
point because I think there are going to be certainly more points on the board.
All right.
Um,
Talking of freak accidents and injuries, Sam,
yeah,
what about a freak accident that has made Formula One interesting for like 2 weeks?
you know, I saw a meme Ollie going around going, I think it's just this girl saying, is there any better sound than this? I don't
Yeah,
know what she's
she's
got,
shaking
and
a
then it
Dunkin'
just cuts
Donuts
to
coffee. Yeah,
yeah, and it cuts to Verstappen is out of the race, and I was like, here we go, it's actually happened. It's jinxed him. Here we are. And it did make it exciting for sure. And we said this on one of the shows. We said, he has to go out for it to make it interesting, and it was a great race. At that
mm,
point, it's a great race, and everyone's obviously a little bit more competitive. Everyone's a little bit closer. Everyone can sniff the blood, so everyone's going a little bit crazy. We saw time penalties where people are trying to obviously get people, trying to cut. cut their losses a little bit as well. Mercedes, absolutely. I mean, Mercedes got it so wrong. We have no idea what's going on there, but it goes to show, um, what's going on there. My question to you is obviously what's going on with Red Bull off the track. Do you think some of those cracks are coming into play because of that? Do you think there's added pressures there now, or
No,
was it just a freak accident?
it's a freak accident. I am unfortunately going to put some water on the fire, so to speak, that's suddenly been stoked up around Formula One. Once is an accident, twice is the start of a trend, and three times there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's how I'll look at it for the moment. Because it wasn't anything to do with an internal engine problem or anything like that. It was something to do with the brake that was then overheating and melting the tire on that right wheel.
Yeah.
So I think it was probably a very easy fix for whatever's happened. It's not happened to Perez's car, which is another sign that it's not an in-team design thing.
Hmm.
So I think it's just a unique moment, unfortunately, for neutral Formula One fans. But
It's
it
it's a shame.
it's what's needed. It also still unfortunately highlights how good Verstappen and that Red Bull are, because it takes just one moment for everybody to start just hoping and believing that this season could be something. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy to get the victory. The only driver in like the last 2 years to have won a race not in a Red Bull is Carlos Sainz. And considering
Yeah.
he's been quite publicly just given the hump for next year out of Ferrari, for him to pick up
Said.
another win for them
Yeah.
and Mercedes and Hamilton to
Yeah.
have a disastrous day. And God, that George Russell moment was scary as well at the end of it. We'll come on to that in a moment. But I'm
Yeah.
so pleased for Carlos Sainz to have got a victory and to be getting all the applause and the acclaim, because he drove a superb race in the end. He
But
was really good all weekend.
before we sort of get into George Russell and stuff, and I'm just trying to keep this signs, but it is still obviously heading towards Mercedes. There's two parts to this. Toto Wolff was asked about Verstappen going over to Mercedes, and it wasn't like a no, like a no. He kind of actually left it open, whether that was mind games or not. It left a little bit of hold on, has there been a discussion? Um,
Mm.
but why is Signs not already automatically being like, hey, we've lost Hamilton, come over to us? Like he is a good driver. Why is that? Why is there no one actually like declaring like, hey, we might be interested in these talks? Is it because they've got drivers in seats right now, or do you feel he's underrated?
Mercedes have a really strong young driver pool as well. I know there's a couple of drivers in F2 and F3 that are on the Mercedes books that they are thinking by next year are going to be ready to come up and come through. They're very much like Red Bull. They have this school system that they bring them up,
Mm,
develop these drivers through. And if you get to F2, that's because Mercedes think you're good enough to be able to step into a Formula One car. We've seen them obviously kind of loan out drivers at times. Nick de Vries was one of them. So he had his spell, got his drive in the Williams and then Alpha last year and stuff. So they have plenty of options already that won't cost a Carlos Sainz amount, which I know the salaries aren't completely all incorporated into the budget cap. I think it's like the top 3 or 4 salaries that the team aren't, but some of it is. So that comes into the equation as well. And I think Carlos Sainz hasn't been consistent enough at Ferrari. He's been in the Leclerc shadow. Leclerc's always been the
mm,
one
yeah.
throughout the time of them together that has had that bit more gumption in crucial moments and the ability to produce that extra quarter of a second in qualifying or on a race when he's needed it. He's also shown that fallibility with the spins that he's had, Leclerc, and Ferrari have also been error prone themselves under the mad scientist Benotti. So
And
it,
that's
it
that's my thing. I think Ollie is that Ferrari. We talk about, or we just spoke about Red Bull as a freak one-off freak accident probably, and it's disappointing for everyone to hear that. But Ferrari, like last year when they were, last couple of seasons, they tried to go sort of toe to toe, whether that was with Mercedes or Red Bull, when they were in the positions to potentially take good points or the podiums, the car gave out.
mm,
So that's it's a, this is why people got to appreciate the sport because it's driver team strategy. There's so many moving parts. You can't just rely on anyone. Whilst people say, "Oh, so and so is in the fastest car," well, Red Bull have two of them. It's they're not like this side by side coming in to the finishing
No.
line. So there's so many other things that obviously come off that. And I think this is where Ferrari get it wrong. And this is where again I'm interested with the Lewis Hamilton move because whilst I think Lewis, with Senna and in the back of his mind is his idol, and I think I'm obviously wanting to be racing in a red car. I don't know how much better it actually gets for him going from Mercedes to Ferrari. I just don't. I'm unsure on that one.
Well, uh, Mercedes have been playing catch up to Red Bull and Ferrari for 2 years, clearly. And I would bank on a long term of Mercedes being right in a short term game, which I think Lewis Hamilton is. Age is definitely coming into the equation. He's not catching up with Fernando Alonso. He's way out in front in the 40s, but Hamilton is well into those late 30s now. So this is he's looking for that short term experience.
Mm.
And right now, Ferrari are ahead of them. But there is a big engine change coming with the more environmentally friendly fuels that are going to be used in Formula One as well in 2026. There's going to be some new teams on the grid. Obviously, Audi are making a
Oh, dear.
push into it. It's it's going to change dramatically again, and I would back Mercedes in a long-term race because they've shown that they have that ability to adapt, catch up, and also to be the first out of the gate when they went into the turbo hybrid era ahead of everybody else as well. But it's short-term moves for Lewis. It's a big splash. He loves the Ferrari. And if you're a driver in Formula One and you can say that you've driven it for McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari, Williams doesn't have the same weight anymore, unfortunately, as it probably did when Hamilton was growing up. That's arguably the three best teams aside from Red Bull that you could drive for. So that's I think it's a career box ticker more than anything else for Lewis. I just want Carlos to get a ride. I really do. I don't know where it would be. I don't want him to see him take a step backwards because I think he's as good a driver as anybody in the
Yeah,
top half of the grid outside of the elite levels that we have right now.
I think he's better than Lance Stroll. I don't know what his contract is at Aston Martin. I think Carlos Sainz in Aston Martin would be good. I don't know how Lance Stroll still has arrived, but I
Daddy
just
got me a job. Yeah.
everything about him stinks. Sorry,
Yeah.
he just there's nothing good comes from that kid. Um, I just like what McLaren are doing as well. It's actually quite nice there. I guess the thing with Sainz and where he's got to obviously look about is does he want to go as potentially the number two driver, or does he want to go in there with like, hey, I've been at Ferrari, make me the number one? Because that's where I think it gets difficult. No, everyone says, oh, there's no team orders. Don't worry, there's no one or two. There's 100% one and two.
If
It's never in doubt. There's
if
always
there
a
were no
one and
team
two.
orders, Oscar Piastri wouldn't have had to allow Lando Norris through in his home race this weekend.
Yeah,
That that was cruel on Piastri, and
yeah.
Norris has been in that situation as well. I'm going to throw this at you then, Sam. Perez leaves the end of this year at Red Bull, and Carlos rolls in alongside Verstappen.
He just is he. I just feel like he's going into the same boat.
But wouldn't you rather be in the same boat in the best car than be the number one driver in an uncompetitive car?
I'll tell you what. I'll give him this. If he does do it, I think he can wave past the Ferrari pit crew and everyone as he obviously flies past. I think he would get his revenge every time. Give it the Queen one as well.
Yeah.
Like as he's going past. So it's not a bad move for him to go and do that. But there is no question that you're playing second fiddle to Verstappen. However, he's so good, Verstappen, you're probably not getting that close to him anyway. But I think, yeah, I mean, you say that. I think Perez is a good driver. It's
Hmm.
there's going to be some good drivers obviously available to a lot. It's a bit like and this is where I talk about with football as well. Like link if it, not trying to link the two here, but when you've got aging drivers and like you said, you've got this. Everyone's got this crop of young drivers. When do you pull the pin and go? We're going to go with youth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
McLaren have made their move with that, and it works really nicely. But then there are a lot of teams on this grid that would love a Fernando Alonso in their car because, last year he drove as well as anybody did in a car that was up in the top three for the first half of the year and then slowly didn't improve.
I'd love to see him in the top team again.
Yeah.
Just like because I would actually just experiment just to see what he could do in a Red Bull.
Yeah.
Like he's so good, and you know what I like about Alonso? No matter where he is in the grid, what's going on in a race, he always plays a part. So if someone's battling it, if he's having a bad day and people battling it out for points, you trying to get past Alonso, tough. Doesn't matter what car you're in,
Mm.
he will make that tough. If he's the one that's coming through the pack, good luck. His tactics are spot on. That experience he has, he is a world champion. Now he drives no matter what day of the week it is, how bad the car is. He drives like a world champion. He's another one I don't think gets enough recognition, mate, for what he does now because he's not always challenging for podiums. But I think he has actually put Aston Martin back like on the map a little bit more,
Oh
just
yeah.
with how he drives and how he drives that car. But yeah, come the end of it's amazing that people are obviously talking about the next season already because of obviously just what's happening. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how it all plays out with any upgrades, obviously, for the remainder of this season as well.
Just finally talking of things that don't get enough respect, and I don't think this gets talked about enough. It was National Non-League Day, of course, during the international break. I know you're heavily
Yeah,
involved in non-league football, Sam.
yeah,
Chesterfield getting promotion back to the Football League in one of the most impressive returns that we've
unreal.
seen
Yeah,
from the Vanarama National League. The National League North and South were featured on TV as well this weekend. Just a bit of
yeah.
shameless self-promotion. I got to do the Kings Lynn Tamworth game as well for TNT Sports up there. I will say Premier League and Championship gantries are very different to a non-league gantry. I
Uh,
think we had about 25% of the pitch blocked off by the cameras that were filming it when we were up there. So
yeah, you nailed it.
that was
Yeah,
fun.
non-league day. Honestly, obviously, I'm managing a team at Step Four for anyone that obviously knows. But I saw this was pinned actually. It said from non-league day compared to average attendances at the clubs who played at home on non-league day from steps one, which is National League, down to step four, which is obviously someone like myself was the Isthmian League. There was an average increase of 24% across all 15 divisions, which was phenomenal for people. It goes such a long way to these clubs as well. But the biggest increase was in the league that I'm in, which is Isthmian South
Mm,
Central, which had an astounding 35.9%
wow.
increase in attendances, which was unbelievable. And actually a shout out to Grantham Town, who had the biggest increase of 229.7%. Honestly, it
Damn.
makes such
That's
a
awesome.
big difference. And it was quite nice to see teams obviously putting it out there in locals, whether it's schools, whether it's obviously fans from Premier League or league sides coming in and supporting their local teams. It goes a long way, and I think this is what needs to be done and taking it away from sometimes the big corporates is when you can't go to your Premier League or your league sides fixture or any sides fixture because it's too far. Go and check out your local team. Honestly, it makes out a massive difference to everyone involved, including all those volunteers that give up all their hard time. That was a little sales pitch for everyone from me to you, but honestly, it goes a long way. And yeah, appreciate the shout out for non-league day.
No, I genuinely think it was awesome when we were down there at Kings Lynn. The lad that runs the scoreboard there, Will, was saying to us like, "Hey, just genuinely proud that they're on TV and they get a chance to be showcased." And it means a lot to these grounds, to these supporters that go week in, week out, and obviously to the players as well. I mean, there were some things that I absolutely adored about the fact that covering the National League and lower this year, you don't have everybody's trying to pass it out from the back and play tiki taka. There's no I mean, okay, Liam Dolman, I'd like you to look up on Google either at the end of this. That is your old school centre back and a half. He got all the ire from the Kings Lynn fans, but he's like 6'1" and a block. Bit of a beer gut. He's not shifted too fast around the place, but he did an absolute job as well in the heart of the back line defensively, and it is great to watch. And not in
Yeah,
like I don't mean that in a patronizing way either of like, oh look, you got a big guy still at the back and what. No, it's a good competitive game of football at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and it means, as you say, a lot to all these clubs. So yeah, no, non-league day was a superb success to say the least, I think.
100%, 100%. But yeah, mate, that's been another week in sport. Enjoyable as ever. Be sure to go and check us out on YouTube for previous episodes. Be a few shorts in there, so make sure to again drop a little comment, see if there's anything you agree with, anything we've missed out on, and tell me and Ollie right now, do you agree with these new rules in the NFL?